Hello everyone. Now, if you look into these pictures, I just want you to think of what comes to your mind. Yes, exactly. I'm sure you're thinking about oil. As you all know, oil provides the most important lubricating media and is used as a raw material for various petrochemical products. Petroleum is obtained from sedimentary rocks and is also known as a mineral oil. It is an inflammable liquid and can be transported to the consuming areas with the help of pipelines. So, the goal for today's class is to learn about petroleum. We're going to understand the different uses of petroleum, the distribution of petroleum, and even try to look at some of the problems associated with this industry. So, let us begin. This is page number 170 from your textbook. So we will try to give a quick introduction to petroleum. So let's underline few lines here. The word petroleum is derived from basically a Latin word which means petra meaning rock because it is derived from a sedimentary rock and oleum meaning oil. So it's a rock, it's an oil which has been derived from rock. Petroleum is known as a mineral oil which is also known as a liquid gold or black liquid gold. Alright, so these are the different names. Now we will try to understand why is petroleum known as mineral oil or the other name liquid gold or black liquid gold. So first, let's underline. It is found in sedimentary rocks. It consists of inflammable hydrocarbons. We already learned what is inflammable and hydrocarbons yesterday and is in a liquid state. It is one of the most important source of energy in transport industry, isn't it? The transport industry, the backbone of the transport industry is the petroleum. So petroleum is the mineral oil is the most important source of transport industry. That is why we often use the word liquid gold or black liquid gold. We can get many different products from petroleum, especially the crude oil. The unrefined oil gives us many byproducts like your petrol, diesel, kerosene, even get byproducts like tar, wax, plastic. There are lubricants, there are paints, varnishes, those all derive from petroleum. So petroleum is called liquid gold because of its versatile, how it has been able to adapt to different uses and importance. So because petroleum can be used and can adapt to many different uses and how it is one of the important sector or important source of energy in the transport sector, that is why we call petroleum as a liquid gold or black liquid gold. Now, what are the requirements for petroleum deposits? So, if you have to deposit petroleum, what are the different requirements? First, the rock has to be porous. Porous rock meaning which has pores or cracks which can allow the storage of large amount of oil. So the rock has to be porous so that the oil can seep in and get stored. Second, permeability of rock strata. Strata means layers. So the layers of the rock has to be permeable, meaning which can allow oil to seep in. So permeable meaning something that allows water to seep in. So here basically we're talking about the oil. So if the rock layers are permeable, the oil can seep in and the collection can take place. And the third is impermeable rock bed. The bed of the rock, the floor of the rock has to be impermeable. Impermeable meaning something that does not allow to seep in. So if the rock bed is impermeable, meaning it can hold the oil and not allow the oil to further percolate down. So these are the three important things that is required for petroleum deposits. One is the rock has to be porous, the rock layers has to be permeable, and the last thing, the most important thing, the rock bed, the floor of the rock has to be impermeable so that the oil do not percolate or seep in further, rather get collected. All right. Now, important uses of petroleum. These are some of the uses of petroleum, which because of which we call it as a versatile or a liquid gold because it has so many different uses and importance. First is petroleum is a very important source of energy in the transport sector, as we all learned. So petroleum, diesel, even the jet fuel, kerosene, lpg, these are all different uses of petroleum. All right. Second, petrochemical products, the different byproducts that we obtain like a synthetic rubber for making your tires, fiber, printing ink, chemical paints, varnishing, plastic, these are all of great importance to us, and these are also derived from petroleum. Petroleum also is used for the generation of electricity. So when you in order to generate electricity, if you have to especially the generators have to use petroleum to generate electricity. So petroleum is also used for the generation of electricity. So these are some of the uses of petroleum, which makes it as a versatile mineral because of its the capability to adapt into many different uses. Now, formation of crude oil. Now you have to understand what is a crude oil. Crude oil here means unrefined petroleum. So crude oil is unrefined petroleum. So this picture that is given in a textbook helps us to understand how do we extract, or how is petroleum formed. So basically, petroleum is also known as fossil fuels. This is one question which they've given in 2012. Petroleum is known as fossil fuels, where they have asked you to give one reason. So petroleum is known as fossil fuel because it is derived from the dead remains of plants and animals. So plants and animals, when they decay and they get decomposed, their body are getting when the bodies of marine organism, they are dead, they start depositing, and when they start depositing, they are covered with alluvium. Alluvium are your sand, silt, covers the body of the marine organism. And third, what happens when these bodies get decomposed, the oil starts getting separated from the bodies. All right, that oil is known as a crude oil. So then the crude oil, which is the unrefined oil, is again extracted through their pipelines and then processed into a finer oil, that is a petroleum. So that is how your petroleum is formed. One important question you have to know: why is it known as fossil fuel? Because it is derived from the dead remains of plants and animals. Okay, so that is about the formation of petroleum. Just remember that when oil is taken out of well, it is in the form of crude oil. So therefore it has to be refined, or impurities have to be removed. After it is purified, products such as diesel, petrol, kerosene are are received from that crude oil. So that is the process of formation of petroleum, how crude oil gets transformed into more refined or purified products such as diesel, petroleum, kerosene, and other lubricants. Now moving to the petroleum reserves in our country, many questions from here. Especially, we'll deal with Northeast first. Assam is the first state to produce oil in India. So sometimes they ask you in name the following: the first state in the northeastern part of India to produce oil. It is Assam. Now in Assam, Digboy is the oldest. Digboy is in Assam. Okay, it's one of the oldest and the second largest oil well in India. There are other places such as the Brahmaputra Valley. There is Moran, Nahar Katia. So you have to at least know two places in Assam, because one time they've asked to mention two petroleum reserves in Assam. So you can learn about Digboy, and Nahar Katia would be a second one. I would ask you all to remember. Now refineries are Digboy and Guwahati in Assam, and now one in Bihar you have to know, Barauni in Bihar. So please remember Barauni in Bihar you have to know. Now, moving to the western and southern India, Gujarat is one very popular state where petroleum reserves are located, and it's one you can remember, Gulf of Khambat. And Arabian Sea, Mumbai High is very, very important. Mumbai High is a very important oil field in the Arabian Sea. And once, I'm sure you've heard about oil spill that took place in Arabian Sea in Mumbai High, and how it affected the economy to great extent. Aliyabet in Gulf of Khambat. So you have to remember each region in each place. In the Arabian Sea, it is Mumbai High. Aliyabet in the Gulf of Khambat. Uh, Petroleum is also discovered in some of the basins of rivers like Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri is also there, right? So from here, whatever we have marked, you have to remember that state along with the region is a must, because sometimes they ask you to name the region. Moving to the next. So these are your oil fields, and how you can see with the help of crude oils are how they are extracted through pipeline. Like you can see here from Gujarat, how they take it to Panipat. All right, so Mathura through pipeline. So that's a pipeline, and how we can see there are different oil fields here in Northeast also you can see dig boys here. So refineries are basically an area where the crude oil is transformed. Okay, so you have to know the difference between oil field and refineries. Refineries is the process of transforming the crude oil, that is the unrefined oil, into more useful products such as petroleum, diesel, LPG. All right, so these are some of the important refineries. Indian Oil Corporation, which is in Barauni, Bihar. You can learn about Dig Boy in Assam. Okay, Bharat Petroleum Corporation, which is another refinery which helps in transformation of crude oil into more refined products. There is in Assam again, Kochi, Kerala. Hindustan Petroleum is there, Mangalore. So at least remember two to three refineries along with where the state they are present in. So I hope all of you are clear with what is refineries. Refineries basically they transform crude oil into more useful products. Okay, so the transformation of the raw or the unrefined oil into more useful products takes place in refineries. Now, many times you get question about refineries as to why are refineries closed. So we will try to talk about two important questions that are often asked in refineries, which has not been discussed here. The first is the first the question regarding to refinery is all refineries are close to oil fields. Why are refineries close to oil fields? So refineries are close to oil fields or ports. This is one question which is often asked. Why are oil refineries located close to oil fields or ports? So the reason why refineries, if you look here, these are your oil fields and how your refineries are very close. So this color is an oil field and refinery. Now how you see oil fields and refineries are always close to each other, or they are most probably they are close to the water bodies or the ports. So what is the reason for refineries to be very close to oil fields or ports is because to minimize the cost of transport and also to avoid the risk of transporting it. Alright, so this is the reason why you always see oil fields and oil refineries close to each other, is because to minimize the cost of transport. Imagine one oil field is here but your refinery is so far. So the cost of transporting the oil, the crude oil to your refinery would be very expensive. So in order to minimize the cost of transport, and the second reason is to avoid the risk. What is the risk here? Because it is an inflammable nature. Petroleum is inflammable in nature, so it can easily catch fire. So you have to avoid the risk of transporting it if the refineries and oil fields are far. So that is one reason why refineries are close to oil fields or near ports. So that's the first question that is often asked from your oil refineries, which is not mentioned in your textbook, but this is important. The second question that is often asked, something to do with refinery, is many port cities have their own refineries. So the second is many port cities have their own refineries. So why do the port cities have their own refineries? Like this port have their own refinery, all right? This has their own refinery. So everybody has their own refinery. So what is the reason for them to have their own refinery? Refineries are basically places where your crude oil, that is the unrefined oil, is transferred into more useful products like your petroleum and diesel. So why do they have their own refinery? The answer would be because India imports, because we import large amount of crude oil. From where? From UAE or the Gulf countries. So most of them have their own refinery. So we buy a lot of crude oil, meaning your unrefined oil, from your Arab countries or the Gulf countries. So when we are buying a large amount of crude oil, if we have our own refinery, we can transfer that crude oil into your more useful products like petroleum. That is why many port cities have their own refineries, because India imports large amount of crude oil from other countries, so that is why they have their own refinery. So that's the second question which is asked from here. Now moving to the next, I would request all of you to read here. They just for you, and then how there is an agency which is set up by Ministry of Petroleum to ensure that the conservation of petroleum products and suggesting ways of reducing the consumption of petroleum in the country. So that is a PCRA, Petroleum Conservation Research Association. Now steps to conserve. How can we conserve petroleum? And as we have been hearing how much there's a lot of controversies all over with the hike of price in petroleum and diesel. So what are different ways to conserve petroleum? The first is the transport sector consumes more than 50. So because this is the sole sector which almost takes up 50% of the production of petroleum, so the fuel efficient engines must be made available at affordable cost. So engines which do not consume a lot of fuel, rather an efficient way to consume fuel, such engines should be made at an affordable cost so that the transport sector could consume less amount of petroleum products. Next, efficient management of extraction, transportation, and use. So, ensuring that there are agencies set up to like PCRA to see that the extraction, the processing, and will not lead to any misuse or spilling of oil or petroleum of the available resources. Third, encouragement in the form of tax benefits and incentives to sectors who are doing a lot of research to come up with fuel efficient engineering, so giving them some benefits and incentives, especially industries and companies, organization that have that are investing their time and effort to develop a fuel efficient engineering technique. And the last is using alternative non-conventional sources like solar, wind, hydropower, rather than just depending on your petroleum reserves. Okay, so these are some steps to ensure that petroleum are conserved, because these are conventional source of energy and they're limited and exhaustible in nature. So that is about petroleum. I hope you were able to understand. If you have any questions, please feel free to get back. Thank you for watching.